Hi, this is Chad Lang. This is a video that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and for whatever reasons, I have just never gotten around to it until now. So, in this video, I want to discuss where well intentioned Latter day Saints fail, and where they fail in helping people who feel differently from they do um, feel like they belong or like they're valued. And so I'm going to be reading from an article from the Ensign, actually. It is the 2006 February Ensign. And just to give a little background here, my sister gave this to me in 2006 when she was still a member of the church. She no longer is, and told me to read it because of the problems that I've had in not just with my family, but with my family and with my religious environment. And I have felt like the character David Storm in the book The Chrysalids my entire life. And this article has been instrumental in helping me identify what uh, a number of social issues are with Latter day Saints and why I call it a cult. And so I'm going to be reading from this article. I have a personal copy of it. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to be reading it off the internet. And it is called Helping Children Develop Feelings of Self-Worth by Brent L. Top, Professor of Church History, and Bruce A. Chadwick, Professor of Sociology, Brigham Young University. And this is directly off of the church's website, churchofjesuschrist.org/study/ensign/2006/02, Helping Children Develop Feelings of Self-Worth. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to skim over a bunch of stuff, but in the paragraph called Maintaining a Strong Relationship, starting at number two, and this is not just a problem in families, this is also a problem on the congregational level, and I'm going to be discussing this afterwards. So, we're going to jump right in here, and I'm going to read the article, and then I'm going to talk about it. So, 2, praise more than you criticize. Parents can and should look for opportunities to praise their children. Children's accomplishments need not be monumental to deserve parental recognition and praise. Children, particularly adolescents, thrive on recognition and acceptance. The youth in our study who reported the most confidence and who felt best about themselves had regularly received praise and positive reinforcement from their parents. On the other hand, those with low levels of both spirituality and confidence overwhelmingly reported that they received far more criticism than praise from their parents and rarely felt respected and acceptable. In my teenage years, I was kind of emotionally unstable because of my low self-esteem, one young adult reported. Sometimes I felt and still feel like I can never do anything good enough for my parents. I feel like I can never meet their expectations. Parents need to have realistic expectations to be willing to recognize and appreciate less than top of the class or best of team performance, especially when their children are trying their best and seeking to improve. Well, if you don't see it, then you're not going to know that that's what they're trying to do. Unrealistic expectations can be discouraging for anyone, but especially for teenagers who naturally struggle with feelings of inadequacy. By contrast, expressions of acceptance and acknowledgement of effort strengthen young people emotionally and motivate them behaviorally. Children who are praised and recognized for their efforts as well as their deeds generally try harder to do better. And now this one, number 3, is even more important. Number 3, counsel, don't control. Our study confirmed that Latter-day Saint youth, like other adolescents, will possess lower levels of confidence if their parents refuse them the opportunity to develop their own views of the world. Confidence and a sense of worth are directly linked to parents granting psychological autonomy to their children. Granting this kind of freedom is different from allowing children to exercise their agency in making decisions. It isn't freedom to act on their own, but rather to think and feel for themselves. It involves encouraging children to have and express their own ideas, feelings, opinions, and perceptions within a context of mutual respect. Mutual respect, what's that? Especially in a religion that is all about seniority and authority. The pecking order only goes one way. Respect works from the bottom up. The people from the top down don't seem to feel the need to have respect for anyone lower on the totem pole as they are, and that seems to be a common attitude that I find in the LDS Church, especially when obedience and authority and conformity are focused on and preached so much. Okay, where was I? It is allowing them to be their own persons. Young people who are denied this kind of emotional freedom before I wanted to get into that, they had to say that it's different from free agency. Why? Because a lot of parents will say, if I give my children free agency, they're not going to want to go to church. So they had to call psychological autonomy something different from free agency, because that's the attitude of a lot of parents. So they had to distinguish that there's a difference. When really, psychological autonomy might be an aspect of being free to act as an agent. So, young people who are denied this kind of emotional freedom may become fearful adults who lack confidence in their ability to cope with the world. Sadly, over 1/3 of the youth in our study reported that their parents seek to psychologically manipulate or control them by inducing guilt, withdrawing love, or dismissing their thoughts and opinions as unimportant. One of my parents is very domineering and opinionated, one teen observed. If you disagree, get ready to have a debate to the death, or just give up to avoid trouble. In our family, there is only one right opinion, and you'd better be sure that yours matches it. Any opinion that is different is considered unrighteous. I never felt like I could express my feelings. Another stated, I hate how one of my parents won't listen to anything I say. My ideas and expressions are always dismissed just because I am a kid. And it doesn't get any better when you become an adult either. Under these circumstances, youth fail to have confidence in their own feelings, ideas, and abilities, and often emotionally withdraw inside themselves and develop emotional problems such as depression, eating disorders, and even thoughts of suicide. Young people who feel their ideas, thoughts, and feelings have been minimized, ignored, or outright ridiculed by their parents may seek out a peer group that will give credibility to their opinions and feelings. Unfortunately, all too often, these friends lack the emotional maturity and spiritual foundation to properly guide and direct them in principles of righteousness. When parents suppress a child's freedom of thought and expression, sometimes the only way that child feels he or she can express a sense of individual identity and value is to rebel. In contrast, young people who have internalized the gospel, gained their own testimonies, and developed a healthy sense of individual worth are those whose parents have counseled with them but have not sought to control them emotionally and intellectually. My parents always encourage us to express our feelings and opinions, even if our ideas are different from theirs. They respect us. One young man reported, parents don't have to express approval of everything their children say or do. What is needed, however, is open communication within the family. When disapproval needs to be spoken and when discipline must be administered, it should be done in the context of love, respect, and understanding as expressed by the Lord in the Scriptures. See D&C 121:44 to 45. Let's read it. No power or influence can or ought to be maintained by virtue of the priesthood, only by persuasion, by long suffering, by gentleness and meekness, and by love unfeigned, by kindness and pure knowledge, which shall greatly enlarge the soul, without hypocrisy and without guile. Reproving betimes with sharpness, when moved upon by the Holy Ghost, and then showing forth afterwards an increase of love toward him whom thou hast reproved, lest he esteem thee to be his enemy, that he may know that thy faithfulness is stronger than the cords of death. Let thy bowels also be full of charity towards all men, and to the household of faith, and let virtue garnish thy thoughts unceasingly. Then shall thy confidence wax strong in the presence of God, and the doctrine of the priesthood shall distill upon thy souls as the dews from heaven. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to read the rest of the article because I disagree with a lot of the religious stuff in it, but I did not have personal autonomy in my family. My father was the kind of person where respect only goes up the totem pole and it does not come back down. That's the way he was taught. That's the way his brothers were taught. That's how his siblings act. That's how they behave. Children do not have the right to have an individual opinion. And I was not allowed to have the right to have any opinion that differed from anyone in my Mormon family. Now, I keep saying this because members of the church who want me to come back to the church keep glossing over these points. Now, when I say that I grew up in a very liberal or left-wing background, in a tiny branch of 3 to 5 active families, and only half my family is Mormon, these facts mean something. These facts have had an influence on what I think about life in the world. Okay? And so when I've left that environment and have participated in an area where the church is strong, where you have wards and strong congregations and a lot of members, and the church is more traditional, there's a lot of cultural influence that comes from being fifth generation Mormon, and the way these people see life in the world. I'm not just saying that to waste my breath, okay? When I moved to Alberta, people were shocked and appalled that I had different opinions about life in the world, that I did not have their gospel interpretation. Okay? They are shocked. Bishops, I heard a bishop speaking that said he did not understand. He did not know that there were people outside of Alberta, kids growing up in the church, who have never read the Book of Mormon. Okay? He was shocked. Where I grew up, most youth go inactive. Most of them. The vast majority. I have cousins who have still never read the Book of Mormon. Okay? This shocked him. These bishops have absolutely no experience with people who are not from these entrenched church centers, and it shows. It shows in their opinions, it shows in the way they talk, it shows in their life understanding. They just lack the life experience to understand what that's like for somebody who did not grow up at the ward level. And so when you get into the YSA, the Young Single Adult Wards, or Young Single Adult Congregations from 19 to 31, these leaderships still often talk down to the congregation. They treat these people like they're teenagers. Still, That's a big problem. When you're so focused on authority, you're so focused on seniority, you're so focused on having more life experience, and you expect that to be acknowledged, and it's constantly worded in the language that you're using when you're constantly talking to your congregation. Anyone who's had any of these problems that I just mentioned is going to have a problem with that congregation. They're going to have a problem with that social structure. So, I was not allowed to have opinions that differed from what my father thought. Okay, he saw it as a personal attack. Okay, he's from a strong area in Alberta, like Cardston or Calgary, living in BC in a small branch, surrounded by liberal left-wing ideas that he finds threatening to his worldview that he does not want his children adopting. Okay, and his children are adopting these worldviews whether he likes it or not. And if he has a problem with it, too damn bad. And he did not grant his children personal autonomy, and all his children have left the church as a result. Okay, that has been the consequence, because his children are not allowed to have an opinion that differs from what is going on in his very entrenched, culturally Mormon mindset. And his brothers are worse. Okay, that's the reality of this situation. And I see a huge disconnect with people at Congregational Mormonism who have just accepted all the indoctrination, and they don't understand the worldview of anyone who has more liberal opinions. They don't understand the worldview of their less actives. There's a huge disconnect there, and people are not understanding one another. Now, I just watched Radio Free Mormon, and the other lawyer guy talk about the Light on Truth letter, or the Light and Truth letter, and going over the fallacious arguments that they think that the author is making, and that the author is completely unaware that he's making fallacious arguments. And then Ward Radio decides to go on an hour later and start bashing, because they think they're defending the church, start bashing Radio Free Mormon, and they have no idea what this guy's point of view is. They just completely gloss over his facts, and they start trashing and mocking, and like they have no idea what they're talking about. You know, and it's there's just a total disconnect in worldview, that they don't see it, and they don't realize what a bunch of asshats they're making themselves out to be. And this happens at the congregational level. People are so glued into the church that they have absolutely no clue what any other point of view is, and there's a serious disconnect, and people are shocked. They're appalled that I have different opinions, that I don't have the gospel opinions that they expect me to have because I was born into the church. Therefore, I should have the gospel opinions that they take for granted and expect. And so when I say I come from a more liberal area and only half my family's Mormon and I grew up in a small branch, that is completely irrelevant to them. Okay? I should just accept all the gospel viewpoints that I'm expected it to accept, or I'm a bad person, or I'm not converted, or I'm going to hell for having a different point of view other than the gospel point of view that I'm supposed to accept. This is the attitude that I have largely met for the 9 years that I was part of the YSA. This is the attitude I've largely experienced every time I've been in Alberta, every time I've associated with Latter-day Saints in Alberta. This is the attitude. They just have no idea. They are so completely disconnected from everybody else in the world who has more liberal opinions about enter issue of your choice in the brackets here. That they don't understand They act exactly the way that it says in this article when a parent's being domineering to their child. They're completely disrespectful. They don't know that they're being completely disrespectful. And then they think, oh, you shouldn't just be offended. I find that John DeLane's top 5 myths and top 5 truths on why active Latter-day Saints leave to be absolutely correct. But you can't have a conversation with active Latter-day Saints who think that the top 5 myths are correct. You can't even bring up John DeLane as a credible source, and they'll completely just dismiss everything that you have to say. Okay, we can't have conversations. Okay? Because you're in this camp, you expect me to be in this camp with you, and I have found in church that if I entertain any notion that does not fit in this camp, I'm subscribing to apostasy. I'm on the high road to apostasy. Now, when you're treated that way all your life, you're guilt-tripped, and you're shamed, and you're mocked, and people are trying to keep you in the church using emotional guilt and other coercive techniques because they don't respect you, they don't respect your point of view, they don't understand it, and they think that you should just sacrifice whatever's going on in your worldly unconverted noggin and think what they think instead. And that's their attitudes. And that's not just the attitudes of a few people, that's the attitudes of most people. And you can't. Like, you have no leg to stand on. You have no basis to have an opinion that is valid or has any degree of legitimacy. Like, you just don't. And they don't care what you have to say. And you expect someone like that to stay in the church in that situation for the rest of their lives, or Jesus Christ can't forgive them? Really? You expect them to endure to the end under those conditions where I have been treated like a non-person, where I have been a doormat all my life, simply because I have different opinions that people consider to be worldly? And if I entertain any notion that you don't approve of, or that you did not implant into my mind due to your hardline interpretation of the gospel, I'm on the high road to apostasy. Well, guess what, guys? Now I'm really on the high road to apostasy. There's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can say about it, and you will never convince me otherwise. It's just flat out not going to happen. That's what happens when you disrespect people to the point where they're just like, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I cannot be a part of this church. Okay, I do not agree with you people, and if you're going to treat me like I'm going to hell because I consider what other people have to say about in life in the world, I'm like, that seems to be a good point. And you're going to treat me like I'm on the high road to apostasy for it every single time. You know what? Just take your book and get out of here. Okay? I know exactly what the Book of Mormon says. I'm well aware of its message, but you know what? Get lost. Okay? Take your book and go. You don't like being told that? Too damn bad. So, you can learn something from the article that I just read and stop being the kind of person who has to disallow or disrespect people who have different views than you do. Or, you know what? The church deserves the level of apostasy that it has experienced. You know, when 90,000 people have used quitmormon.com to remove their name from the records, the church deserves that apostasy because this is how a lot of members act. And a lot of members don't think that they've done anything wrong because their intentions are good. And because their intentions are good, you are not allowed to say anything critical of why those intentions might be hurtful or harmful to anybody else. And if you're just hurt too damn bad, you're coming from a place of weakness. Okay? Get over it. Come back to church, get over it, and be treated like a doormat for the rest of your life. Silently. I am not just going to keep sweet and endure to the end. Okay? You got a problem with what I think about life in the world? Take your book and go. Okay? And now that I've done a lot of research, no, I do not think the things about Joseph Smith that you want me to think. Okay? I have reasoned out in my mind exactly how someone like that could have come up with a book without it being a divine miracle. And if you don't like that, tough. Okay, you want to think I'm an asshat? Well, I don't think very highly of you either. Okay, we're not getting anywhere. We are in completely different camps. You want me to leave my camp and come to yours and not maintain any ideas or notions in that camp and embrace all your ideas and notions instead. And you don't know how ridiculous and how, you're being ridiculous. You don't even understand you're being ridiculous because your intentions are good. And you think that those good intentions mean that I should just unconditionally forgive you and not have a problem and put myself under your environmental and social control. And I'm not going to do that because I have been seriously hurt by this behavior. Okay? And I'm not going to put myself under coercive, manipulative, emotional tactics, which I'm going to be identifying because I'm going to go through this book. I'm going to be reading this whole thing, and we're going to talk about why this is Mormon mind control. And if you don't like it, too bad. This is what I think about life in the world now, and you're probably not going to change that. Now, if you want to have any hope, you need to learn how to engage with me on my level. But if you're just going to continue being in your camp, if you're going to continue to have no clue what anyone else thinks outside of your bubble of life perception, then we're done. Okay? There is no conversation. Have a nice life, enjoy your church, and you will never change my mind. I want you to understand that deep in your heart. Okay? So, this is where Latter-day Saints are failing, and they're failing to understand their less actives and their fellow man, because those less actives probably have more liberal viewpoints. And if you considered me to have any liberal viewpoint whatsoever as subscribing too much to the doctrines of man, then you're an idiot. Okay? And you have no idea how ridiculous and unfair you're being when it comes to people having opinions in life in the world and seeing what's going on around them and coming to a conclusion. You're being really unfair about it. You're being ridiculous. You're being an asshat, and you're being disrespectful, and you can take your book and get out of here. So, I'm Chad Lang. Have a nice life.